our workshops that we are providing. So colleagues, the workshops will be uploaded to all the digital platforms that we are having, which are the Moodle communities, the postgraduate Moodle communities, which includes the master student and honors PhD student, as well as supervisor community, as well as also the PDRF module communities. So if colleagues, by this time you are not enrolled in any of the communities, you are more than welcome to send us an email on RCT inquiries or supervision course, and then we will enroll you to your respective module community. However, colleagues, now we have moved to the RCT management system, which is the new system or platform that we are currently using for all our workshops. So we upload all our resources, previous workshop recordings, and also you can able to book for any upcoming workshop via that system that we have. So if you still have not yet registered on the RCTMS, also send us an email, and then we will schedule a Teams meeting to register you. On the RCTMS colleagues, you can also download your own certificate of attendance immediately after the workshop, and then the system will generate the certificate of attendance for your own convenience. So that platform is available under the services on your U-Link, and then the last option is RCTMS. With that being said, colleagues, now allow me to just go through some few housekeeping rules. I will enable all your mics. Please do make sure that at your side, there is no background noise that is coming that can interrupt the proceeding of this workshop. However, if you do have a question, just raise your virtual hand, or alternatively type under the chat or under Q&A, and I will notify Prof that someone has a question. Prof, if I may ask, would you prefer to take questions at the end of your presentation, or would you prefer to take them along the way as you go with your presentation?
Actually, the conversation that I have today is not really me doing a monologue and a presentation by PowerPoint and all of that. I thought I wanted a much more interactive conversation with the people in the room. Part of it is also because I think we have a process that we are working with at UJ, but we also have different faculties. And although I might know a lot about what's happening in the Faculty of Education, I may not have enough information about what's happening in the Faculty of Law or in the Faculty of Engineering. So I rather wanted an audience where it would be a lot more interactive rather than a PowerPoint presentation that may not necessarily serve everybody. So I think I will have the full view of everybody in the room. And I think we will try and create a space where it would almost be like a conversational space in which our questions are answered, but also our various experiences are shared as well.
Thank you for that, Prof. Colleagues, you have had Prof. So this is a discussion. So if you have any question or if you want to add anything, you can just raise your hand or alternatively type under the chat, and I will monitor that together with my colleagues and notify Prof that someone has a question under the chat or under Q&A, or someone has raised their hands. Also, colleagues, I will be sharing a feedback toward the end of the session, a feedback evaluation link. We kindly request you to take your 2 to 3 minutes to fill in the survey or feedback. It helps us in terms of improving our service delivery and also to see the impact that we are making via providing this kind of workshop that we are providing. Not only that, colleagues, it will also ensure that you get a certificate of attendance, because that is where we will get all your details correctly. Remember, when you register for the workshop, you have to use your correct details so that when we issue out a certificate of attendance, and then we will issue it without any incorrect details. With that being said, colleagues, now allow me to introduce our facilitator, Prof. Katija. Prof. Khadija is an associate professor within the Faculty of Education at the University of Johannesburg. Currently, she teaches at postgraduate levels, honors, masters, PhD, and ADE, most of which are online programs offered by her department. She is an innovative thinker and experimenter of alternative pedagogies and offers classroom experiences that invite students to co-create learning. Together with her students, she is developing conceptions around the kind of learning revolution needed for education in the South African context in relation to 4IR. Her current research interest at UJ focuses on leading learning for sustainable. She also coordinates the Sandbox project in partnership with the DPE Innovation Unit, the NECT, where she works with school principals to transform learning cultures of low quintile schools towards sustainable 4IR imperatives. She also coordinates the TESF project in Horspread, where school food gardens are explored as third spaces for learning. Prof. Yasim uses critical pedagogy and capabilities approach to teaching, learning, and research. She subscribes to the use of participatory methodologies, including VPR, to research with and not on participants. Sustainable and transformative leadership of learning is a prominent feature of her approach towards solving some of South Africa's big questions in education. Colleagues, let's warmly welcome our facilitator. Once again, thank you, Prof. Katisha, for honoring our invite. We're looking forward to your presentation, and colleagues, we do encourage an interactive engagement, so don't hesitate to ask a question and engage with our facilitator. Thank you once again, Prof. You can start with your session. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, Prof. Kasim. Apologies. I think the mute button is still on.
I'm sorry, David. Thank you for alerting me. So a very warm welcome to all of you this morning, and a huge thanks to the RCD unit for organizing this event, as well as the series of workshops that's really building capacity in terms of postgraduate supervision, but also student capacity in terms of the things that they need. So I really feel very privileged to be in the space of 96 people in the room, which is really lovely to see, given that we are on recess at the moment. So the first question that I have for the room is, if just by way of a thumbs up, if you could indicate to me whether you are currently supervising PhD students. So if you could just by way of a thumbs up, it just gives me an indication, to the audience in the room. So are you currently supervising, or have you supervised postgraduate PhD students previously? Not seeing any thumbs up. So I'm assuming that either you are novice supervisors who are going to be, embarking on the journey of supervision with PhD students, but some of you might have supervised postgraduate students at honors and master's level. And that being said, I think it's really great for us to have a beginning with your own experience as a postgraduate student. So I'm just familiarizing myself with the kind of audience that I have in the room right now. So is there anybody in the room who themselves have gone through a VIVA process, where apart from submitting your thesis, you also had to defend your thesis in the presence of your external examiners? Is there anybody in the room who has had that experience? You can just by way of a thumbs up. Oh, okay. I see two people in the room, or a couple of people in the room who have had that experience. So at least we have had, if we have not had from a supervisor point of view, an experience of a VIVA, we do have a few people in the room who have from a student point of view had that experience. Cynthia, do you mind if I call upon you to perhaps share your experience in being on the other side of the VIVA, where you were defending your thesis? Would you be able to give us just some of your experience and a brief overview of how that process went for you, particularly as a student from your perspective?
Good morning, Prof. Good morning, colleagues.
Morning, Cynthia.
Unfortunately, I'm still a PhD student. I didn't defend yet, but I'm only supervising honors and master's students.
Okay,
Thank
so you are still gonna be the student who will defend your
Then,
thesis down the line. Okay, no problem,
that's
Cynthia. I was
right.
actually looking for people who have defended their thesis already. I see Yolanda has got a hand up. Yolanda, if you want to take it, maybe take the baton and share from a student experience. How was that experience for you as a student, and what did you learn from it?
Good morning, Prof. Good morning, everyone. So for me, it was not for my PhD, but I've had that experience for my undergraduate and my 2 master's degrees. It's a requirement that you defend your thesis. The way I would view it is that you're just supposed to know your thesis. So initially, it's you talk about what you've written, what your research is about. For example, like you get your methodology, you're supposed to tell them what methodology you used, and so on, and your findings. And then questions will come from what you would have presented, and also to note that these people would have read your thesis. So they know exactly what they're looking for. Sometimes they'll ask you things that you would have not spoken to as you're presenting on your thesis. So they'll ask you about that. And some who have deeper knowledge, because of course, these are people who have knowledge in the specific field. Some have deeper knowledge will ask you things that you probably did not write in your thesis, just for information or just for you to see maybe in hindsight some things that you should have included in your thesis. But basically, that is my experience. And it's about 20 to 30 minutes from undergraduate and master's level. I'm not sure how long it would take for the PhD, but I also work in a university, and I think that is how we do it for our PhD Viva bosses. So that is my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Yolanda, for that overview. So yes, colleagues, from a student perspective, if you are going to be defending your thesis, you are required to make a presentation. So from a student perspective, and if you're supervising a student, of course, you have to prepare your student to make a presentation. Now, remember, this is happening at a juncture where you have submitted your PhD thesis. It has gone to the examiners. They have reviewed it thoroughly. They have provided their report and all of their findings. And your supervisor, yourself, as well as your examiners are aware of what they thought about your thesis, what were the strengths of your thesis, but then also what were the areas that they actually thought you needed to think a little bit more about or give a little bit more depth into. So Yolanda, you're absolutely correct. At UJ and in most South African universities, we don't have a defense that happens at honors and master's level, at least in this kind of way. What we do have at a master's level is a presentation to a committee. And that presentation at the committee is at proposal level. And at that proposal level, the committee in a master's situation will support the student in terms of giving them some indication as to whether the kind of research, the methodology, the questions that they're asking, as well as the theoretical frames that they are wanting to use, if that is an appropriate kind of proposal, or is there other kinds of things that the student needs to be thinking about. So at UJ, at our master's level in particular, when you have that doctoral committee meeting, and some of you may have experienced that, that is a much more developmental space. It's a space in which people are trying to build you. People are trying to, give you the wisdom of planning research that will allow you to do this kind of research without falling into the pitfalls that you may have not picked up, or the blind spots that you may have not picked up. It's like having a critical reader look over your proposal. And that happens here by us at master's level. At doctoral level, of course, we also have a doctoral committee that looks at the proposal. Now, these are not necessarily the examiners. We also have the same committee who will review the thesis, and it's only done by way of presentation before submission, again as a developmental approach to support the students. So at proposal, you will get inputs, you will get ideas, you will get critical responses to your proposal. But then once you've done all of your research, just before you can submit for exams, you also have a doctoral committee that sits and doesn't look at your whole thesis, but at least looks at your final presentation and gives you some of their inputs. Now, remember, obviously, in the beginning, you were planning your research. Later on down the line, you have done your research, you have packaged it, you have put it together in a very important piece of writing called a thesis. And now you've presented to your doctoral committee. It's been developmental. People have supported you. They've given you a critical read and a critical understanding of what you're trying to put it out into the world. And you use all of that to obviously improve, your thesis and your thinking. And in that way, obviously, you're hoping that your examiners, whatever problems might have come up, that your doctoral committee and your supervisor have helped you with this. Now you submit for examinations. The external examiners are, in our particular faculty's case, is 2 local examiners and 1 international examiner is a mandate, but you can have more than 1 international examiner. So there are 3 people at any given point in time that is looking at a dissertation or a thesis. The thesis now goes out for examination process. It's exactly how it used to be before. The examiners are vetted through faculty higher degrees, and on that vetting, their CVs are looked at. Certain criteria is decided upon to, decide if they are going to be the good examiners for this or the most appropriate examiners for this. And, once they are vetted at faculty higher degrees, there's a sign-off process, and then the administrator, when you submit, will then send your thesis to the various examiners. The supervisor has got no communication with the examiners during the time of exam. So the examiners cannot call your supervisor and say, hey, in the thesis, the student mentioned, something related to this process. I just want to clarify, there's no such a thing. So there is no communication between the supervisor and the examiners during this process. But then remember, there are 3 examiners now that are looking at your work. And so they know your work intensely because they've already read it. They've already produced a report around it, and they've passed you with minor revisions, or they've passed you with major revisions. And in some cases, of course, if there are big glaring issues that have not been addressed, then there could be a problem, for some people. But let's take the best case scenario where the examination process has gone through successfully. So once that has now happened, then a VIVA VOSI process is put into place. Now, even though your examiners have given a written report, and they have also given their thoughts and ideas, they've also given a result, at a PhD level, your examination process is not complete until you defend your thesis. Now, whereas previously when you're presenting at proposal stage or in your last doctoral committee stage, it was developmental. It was not an examination process. Those were just extra eyes to look at your work, to understand your thoughts and your processes apart from your supervisor, and to provide certain inputs that will help you. So it's a very developmental process. Those processes are developmental. This is a proper examination process. So today, the conversation that we want to have is about what is the role of actually the sort of title is wrong. It's supposed to be the non-assessing chair. what is the role of the non-assessing chair? This is a person who is from the faculty or has been chosen to be the chair of this particular examination process, but this person has got no vested interest and no relationship really with your thesis. They're not part of your doctoral committee. They're not your examination panel. They are just there to make sure that the processes that is held within this exam process is fair, is according to the regulations, and if there are obviously any cognitive dissonance or disputes, then the non-assessing chair is there to sort of referee those kind of processes. Although I've not really heard of any viva voce at UJ that, where people didn't agree with each other. There was some kind of, dispute. But then this particular process in some faculties at UJ had come through a while back. So in the humanities, as far as I'm aware, they already had a viva voce process a few years before. And then in 2024, there were a huge bunch of discussions at Senate around the viva voce process and to make it mandatory then for PhD. The reason for this big debate was centered around a lot of the fake qualifications that had been, popularized in the news, where people become board members or they put on their CV that they have a PhD from such and such an organization. Or the other end of the coin was where people were accused of not actually doing the research work by themselves, that somebody else had done. Because from a piece of writing, I can't tell, is this really Yolanda's work? Is this really David's work? So the viva voce was then put into place to allow some quality assurance, both by way of the fact that this qualification is, by all intents and purposes, achieved through the hard work, and it is the sole work of the particular student concerned under the supervision of whoever supervising the person. So this viva voce was brought into process because of that. Now, even though the examination reports are in, it is not guaranteed that you have passed until you pass the viva voce. And this is where the non-assessing chair comes into play. So the chair's role in all of this is to ensure that the examiners are given adequate opportunity to interrogate the student and to make sure that whatever answers they needed or whatever thoughts they had or whatever they couldn't speak to anybody about when examining the written thesis, they now have an opportunity to interrogate that. On the other hand, it also gives the student the opportunity to share the work from their perspective. In this particular space, the supervisor is present, but the supervisor is not allowed to interrupt, is not allowed to answer for the student, and is not allowed to provide any input whatsoever. The supervisor is an observer, and so the student definitely is prepared before the time to get into the room with the examination panel, because obviously, as a lot of students sitting in here, you'd be thinking to yourself, I really don't know what I'm supposed to do. What am I just present the whole thesis? What is it that they want from me? What kind of questions are they going to ask me? And those are the kinds of things that will play on the student's mind. So the student has to be prepared by the supervisor to get into the space of the viva voce and to be prepared for that examination process. But when examination is happening at the time of the viva voce, the supervisor is not meant to contribute anything. Even if a student is stuck when an examiner asks a question and can't really respond because they're nervous or they can't think, the supervisor can't jump up and say, okay, let me help you. So the one role which you must remember is that the chair of the committee is the non-assessing chair. This person has got nothing. They haven't really looked at your thesis. They don't know about the kind of research that you've done. They don't have in-depth knowledge. They are just there to ensure that the process happens according to procedure, and they are there to also be witness to the final result. That's the role of the non-assessing chair. The student, prior to the examination, has to be prepared by the supervisor on, making that presentation. And the external examiners are there. Now, usually there are 3 external examiners that are part of the process. They try by all means to have all 3 of them present during the VIVA VOSI, but sometimes not everybody is available. And so if 2 of the 3 examiners are present, the process will go ahead. But of course, if we only have 1 examiner, then the process can't go ahead. So we do need at least 2 of the 3 examiners to be in the room. The preference would be that all 3 of them would be in the room. Now, they have given you a report. They have given you their written thoughts, and they have given you an outcome. That now is not a secret anymore. At the stage of VIVA VOSI, that outcome, that reports of theirs is not a secret anymore. It is available to your supervisor, and it is available to you as well, because you are meant to then obviously do corrections to your thesis and whatever. The thing now is that you have the job of preparing a presentation. And the presentation now can't be where you're explaining to them your thesis from beginning to end. The presentation would be a verbal introduction of your study, but then it will also address the key areas of concerns that was highlighted in the various reports. And that's what your presentation is. So the part of defense is going to be, these are the aspects that were the outcomes of that particular examination. Each of the examiners have given you their thoughts on the various parts of your thesis. Each of the examiners have given you some kind of indication as to what their thinking was. And now you will have to then address it in your thesis, but also in your presentation to them, have a response ready for the areas that they have particularly been concerned about. Ellison, please go ahead. I'm so happy that you raised your hand. Please go ahead. Ellison Shumba.
Plumba, you can just
thank you,
unmute your mic.
Prof.
Sure.
Yes, I finally managed to unmute. Just a quick question. Do you get the reports before the VIVA VOS or during the VIVA VOS or after? Because I'm thinking you get them before so that maybe you can, should your presentation address some of those issues that have been highlighted, or will you then respond to it maybe later?
No, you get it before your before the VIVA VOSI. In other words, it is also meant to help you prepare for the VIVA VOSI, because you can't go in there not knowing what your examiners think and what is it that they really have in terms of their queries or their thoughts or their opinion about your work, and also where are the areas that they actually had some issues. You need that information to be able to walk into that space prepared. So those reports are available to you and certainly to your supervisor, and you are expected to look at those reports and work through them as part of what you prepare in your initial presentation to the panel. So initially, the chair will come in, they will introduce everybody, they will welcome you, and normally before you enter the room as a student, there will be some kind of a discussion about the kind of questions that people have and who will ask which question when. Like I will ask the first question, the second examiner will ask. So there will be some kind of admin process the chair will take care of. Then you will be brought into the room. As a student, the most important thing is that your video has to be on. They have to see you at all times. You can't have a blank screen with names like this, because they want to know that it is you who is answering whatever the questions are. They also want you, obviously, in a space where there's no interruptions, but certainly they definitely you will have access to those reports before the time so that you can prepare your presentation around some of those concerns that they have. Now, sometimes the concerns may be things that you agree with. You never thought about it, or the particular area that they are highlighting as things that you need to change or things that you need to think about are things that you never thought about before, or nobody critiqued it in that way before, and it enhances your thesis. So you're in agreement with that. But then, of course, say, for example, in the case of one of my students, there was a problem, not with the theoretical framework, but they thought that the student needed to add another framework in there. In other words, there was another framework that we had not been aware of, and they thought this would be an amazing framework that would complement the existing framework that the student had used. Now, remember, when you're using a theoretical framework, not only does it impact your chapter where you're describing the theory, it also impacts your data analysis, which means it's quite a bit of work to do if that comes up as a kind of comment. So, you can look at some of those comments and you can say, hey, I completely agree. This will definitely enhance. I never thought about it that way. Thank you so much. But this is then how I went on your advice. This is how I either have done the work of change or I'm planning to do the work of change. So those are the things that you are going to have to vet, but you definitely have those reports before the time. Let us go to James. James, please go ahead.
Good morning and thank you,
Morning.
Chair. Yeah, the two questions, examiners panel as well as the committee that is assessing. I want to check, are these two bodies the subject guru, meaning that they know the subject that I am studying on, are not people that I pick up everywhere. It's the people that they know a subject that one it's studying. That's one. Number two, you made mention of the examiners that might be, ideally they have to be 3, but you said that they might be 2. Now the question I'm having is this one. Was there or that might be an event where the 2 examiners that are there, that they cannot find each other out of the examination that they have done, meaning that it's like they are equal. One decide, one is keeping this one, the one is keeping this one. Now, in that instances, is there a middleman whom he can say, no, fine? Because if there were 3, one would say, no, 2, they agree, meaning that the other one is falling off. So in that instances, do we have maybe for an example, experience of that nature where they might disagree with a certain outcome and then they get like an equal thing? Those are the 2 exact questions that I'm having. Thank you.
No, thanks, James. So the first thing is that the examiners are going to be the people who are questioning you in your viva voce, which means that they are selected based on their expertise. So these are people that have been vetted by faculty higher degrees. Your supervisor would have to nominate them. CVs would have to be provided before they examine you. So they have to go through faculty higher degrees and be vetted at faculty higher degrees. So these are people who are in the field. These are people who have all the qualifications and all of the criteria to examine your thesis. So there is never a time where people are chosen to examine your thesis who do not have the requisite criteria. Now, in a viva voce set of circumstances, if we have 2 examiners and for some reason there is a bit of a dissonance and maybe, the one is sticking to his or her point and the other one is also, adamant that they have an opposing point of view. In that particular case, these would be noted. But it would be up to the supervisor to then make the decision based on the 2 debates that are possibly happening in the room. Because remember, at the end, we don't always agree as experts. Sometimes there's a cognitive dissonance that may actually occur, but then it would be up to the supervisor to make a strategic decision with motivation as to which point of view they might agree on. They might, in a rare instance, also call on the 3rd examiner with the recording, because remember, these sessions are recorded. And then the third examiner may then, upon the recording, also provide an opinion. But generally, remember that when you enter a VIVA VOSI, there has been already an examination process. So the supervisor is already going to be well aware of what the individual examiners have thought about your dissertation. You are also going to be well aware of that. And the point of the VIVA VOSI is not really for experts to fight with each other, but for a group of people to actually know that you have a handle and that you have in-depth knowledge about your particular work, and that when you are asked to verbally provide information about your work, that you're able to provide that information like an expert can. Because remember, your thesis is bringing new knowledge, and that new knowledge is something that you own as the PhD holder, which means that you are the expert of that knowledge. And they are just trying to ascertain. So the purpose of the VIVA VOSI is not about opposing views. The purpose of the VIVA VOSI is to really know whether this is your work and whether you own this information. I don't know if I'm making sense there, James, on your point, on your part. Don, please go ahead.
Good morning, Prof. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Prof, if I'm asked a question during the interview that I don't know the answer to, will I be penalized? And also, how would you advise us to answer that question that we don't know the answer to in a way that somehow allows us to salvage the situation and not make us look bad?
Okay, so remember, Don, everybody is aware that you're going to be nervous. Even your examiners are going to be aware that you're going to be nervous. So my advice to my own students is this. When you don't immediately have an answer to a question, and part of it is because nerves is getting the better of you, because remember, they can't ask you a question you won't be able to answer. Then you first say, can you clarify the question? Or can you elaborate on the question a little bit more? I don't quite understand what is it that you are asking me. So you can sort of play for a bit of time by giving the examiner the opportunity to elaborate a little bit more. Or you could actually, together with that, you could actually say, at this point in time, be honest, I don't really have an answer for you at this point in time, but my thought is that your point is very valid, and I think I have to go and look at what you are suggesting. Perhaps discuss this a little bit more with my supervisor, and then see how it impacts my thesis, and I will be sure to insert any changes should I discover that whatever it is that you're saying is important. So you need to find a way of deflecting, but you can't not be honest. So that's the advice that I give everybody. Don't say you know something when you actually don't know anything about it. Then you're going to work yourself into a muddle. So I would say elaborate on the question so that it buys you a bit more time and gives you a little bit more of what the person really wants. The second thing is just say, there has been so much of information that has been coming at me. I never got around to reading that concept that you're talking about, but I'm definitely noting it down, and I will definitely look it up. And if it is something that I can include in my thesis, between my supervisor and myself, we will definitely find a way to include that. So Don, that's the way in which I would sort of hedge that particular question. And I hope that that helps you to sort of buy a bit more time. But like I say, just be honest. Don't ever try and fight something up and find an answer. The other advice on your point, Don, and I had this dissonance with my own student, is do we go with the examiner suggestion even if we disagree with it? And this was a huge dilemma because remember, as I told you, the examiner actually in the most recent VIVA VOSI that my student was a part of, the examiner had actually said that he needs to add a theoretical framework. This did not only mean that his chapter on theory would have been impacted, but this also meant that he would have to go back to data analysis. It was a little bit of a bigger overhaul when you say include another theory in there. And we had arguments that could tell the examiner that we don't agree with you. We don't think that this is the way that we should go. But I left the choice to my student, and my student decided to not to not sort of disagree with the examiner, the student decided to go ahead with agreeing with the examiner and do the extra work that was required. But then there are these dilemmas that also, kind of come up. And I think guidance and, your own affiliation to how you feel you want to proceed with this all stands ground. But examiners really want to know that you are teachable too. And that's what the examiner actually said, the one who wanted my student to add another theoretical framework. He said, I'm so happy to see that you're still open to learning. And that then gave also me the indication that my student had made the right choice. Instead of defending what he had and saying, no, I disagree with you on that, the student, after measuring what the examiner was saying, after reading through the new theoretical framework and all of that, and even though knowing that it was going to be a little bit of extra work, the student went ahead and did what was going to make sense and what they felt they had wanted to do. So as a supervisor, I can guide my student. I can give him the pros and cons of the two opposing views. I can help him to defend certain things that he may want to defend. But in the overall sense, that work belongs to my student. And he or she is going to have to make the call on that, even though I can guide them on it. So Don, in some ways, not an easy question, particularly if you disagree with somebody. So forget about examiners disagreeing with each other. Imagine you disagree with the examiner. Then you need to make a call there. And that can sometimes be a little bit dicey. And I don't have the answer for you. I just think you need to measure it out. You need to see, what is the examiner saying? Does it make sense what he's saying? Even if it means extra work, do I keep or do I completely disagree with him? And do I need to defend it from that point of view and convince the person to come onto my thinking? So that's the kind of slippery slope there sometimes, Don. Tumelo,
Thank you
please
very
go ahead.
much.
Perfect. Tumelo, go ahead. Tumelo, are you unable to unmute?
Tumelo, you can just unmute your mic.
Never mind. Perhaps it was a
Okay.
legacy hand.
Yeah. While we're still waiting for Tumelo, Prof, we have some few questions on the chat.
Mhm.
Let me just go through them quickly. We have one from Clark. Is it really a defense, or is it rather a demonstration of proficiency and competence in the field and deep knowledge of the subject area research? Should a VIVA voice preferably only be in person mode presentation akin to a TED talk style presentation, meaning that the assessment committee has a PowerPoint with explanatory notes, but the student talks directly through the methodological strategy without any prompts or aids?
Thanks, Colette. That's a lovely question. So even though the in-person mode is what is expected, the in-person is also sort of like this, where you see the person on the screen as well. So it's not physically always available. Part of it is because we have external examiners that are international. So imagine the cost to the university to fly people in and out. And remember the amounts of PhDs. I think the other day, was it engineering or one of the other spaces that were qualifying PhD students? And they spoke of something like 146 PhD students or postgraduate students. So the numbers we're talking about every year going through graduation is large, which means that for faculties to have the resources to fly people in and out for the in-person in the same room type of situation is not always possible. And what has become the gift, I suppose, of COVID and of online presence and the way in which we meet each other online is that much of this is actually done online. It's convenient, I suppose, for everybody. The examiners, all the cameras need to be on, which means that the one thing that is important is connectivity. Now, for example, my student was in Limpopo and he had to drive away from home and wherever he was to a place where a hotel or something where the connectivity was never going to go out, even if it was load shedding and stuff like that. So there is a connectivity requirement. and the student will have to make it, especially if they are in far-flung spaces. Sometimes the external examiner may also be, we had one instance where I was chairing and the examiner was somewhere in the field. And what they did instead was, instead of being present to have a direct conversation, they did a lot in the chat. So some, modifications or improvisations do happen. And in this particular case, the Viva Voce, in my experience, is that the proficiency, competency, and so forth in the field and a deep knowledge of the subject that you have done is already examined through the conversation that you're having. So remember, the questions that they're asking require that depth of knowledge. They're going to be asking you questions that will test your knowledge in terms of this. So for example, my particular student, he looked at learning agility in school leaders. And there are various kinds of factors that bring together learning agility. He used a mixed methods process. And in the mixed method process, there's a quantitative process and there's a qualitative process. And he also used different participant perspectives. So he used a superior perspective, the perspective of the person themselves, the leader themselves, and he also used the perspective of people that were subordinate. So the superior, the person, and subordinate perspectives, there was a quantitative process, and then there was also a qualitative process. Now, the examiner is well aware of what the data shows, well aware, but they don't have the raw data. So, for example, in one of the questions, there was an outcome that showed, in order to be to show that you're a highly agile leader, you would have to demonstrate competencies in these particular areas, and self-awareness was one of those areas. And the examiner had wanted to probe a little bit more around some of that. And that conversation, in terms of the question that even though the student presented, the questions that the examiners asked went into methodology, they went into the raw data a little bit and so forth. So they try to kind of test your knowledge, not only in the depth of the work, but also with things like the raw data and so forth that can sometimes, surface as part of the process. So it depends. Nobody restricts the external examiners in terms, or the committee in terms of what kind of question they're going to ask. They have free rein to ask. They can even ask questions that they did not ask in their report. So, so this is kind of how my experience of it has been, Colette. And I'm not sure if, there are other ways of doing it. And that's why I wanted in the beginning to check if people have had other experiences. So it doesn't quite appear like a TED Talk type presentation. It's actually much more centered around this work was examined. These were the reports that came in. This is what I think about those reports. These are the spaces in which my examiners have given me commentary, and I'm now responding to those commentaries. And then the examiners basically do some, deeper digging in terms of what things interest them. And sometimes they make it up in the defense itself. They hear you say something and they want to jump down that rabbit hole, and they do it. So this is the nature of what I've experienced, at least at UJ so far. So I hope that answers your question, Colette. There is a presentation. The student is presenting from the presentation. So there is a PowerPoint going, and the student is presenting from it. So it's the student that designs the presentation, and the student uses it as a tool to actually have that introductory space in which to have a conversation with the examiners. I hope that helps. Shall we go for the next online question, or take somebody with a hand up, Chair?
Prof, let's just take one from the chat and then we'll go for the hands. There's one from Olowafela. After submitting to the supervisor, what is the next thing and how many days does it take to get back from the examiners?
Okay, so you don't submit to the supervisor, number one. Your supervisor supports you for submission. You submit to somebody that is an administrator in the faculty. Normally, the person who is also the secretary of the faculty higher degrees. So your supervisor is not involved in sending it to your examiners and so forth. There's an admin person that's independent. Your supervisor doesn't even have that email address and all that. You submit it to that email address. The administrator will then send it to your examiners. And then examiners are given a period of time. It's usually, they give them around 6 to 8 weeks. It depends on, the time frames. So they give them a period of time. It's more than a month that they give them, because remember, the examiners are also busy people. So when they agree to it, they also, have other work to do. So they schedule it in. So they give them about 6 to 8 weeks in which to examine the thesis. However, if I bring one of those admin people in here, they will tell you that examiners sometimes do not submit the reports on time. They do not get a chance to get to it even during that 6 to 8 weeks period. Then there will be reminders and people will remind them. I had in one instance an examiner who was not responding because they were very sick, and nobody had told us that they were very sick. They accepted the package, but after 6 or 8 weeks, we were contacting them and the person couldn't be located. They were not responding to phone calls or to, emails and whatever it is. And in that particular instance, we were told to replace the supervisor. That's why also in faculty higher degrees, we give a backup examiner. All faculty higher degrees, there's the examiner set who will examine, all things being fair. But if one of them falls off, like they can't do it, or they refuse to do it, or they get sick, or something happens, there's a backup that's normally already there. The reason for that is to avoid wasting time by sending the whole choice of examiner vetting back to faculty higher degrees, which means it has to make the next meeting, and then people have to look at the person's CV. So we do it in the initial stage, have a backup person in the initial stage. Sometimes we use the backup person, sometimes we don't use the backup person. So those reports will come from the examiners, we hope, between 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes earlier in some cases. And I've often examined and given information earlier. But in a lot of cases, there are some delays, and then we follow up. Then the examiner may actually give a new date and say, I can do it in another 2 weeks' time, or give me a little bit of time. I'm not available to do it right now. So we give them a bit of space to do it. Or if we can't get hold of them for some reason, not a deliberate reason, but a reason that they're sick or something happened, then we, the backup examiner will come into play. There can be delays, colleagues, with examination processes. It's not always in our control, the examination process, but the admin people try to follow up as best as they can. They try to, first of all, when they submit your dissertation for exams or thesis for exams to the examiner, they get a receipt back that you've received the thing and you are okay to do it. So they get that initial confirmation. Then 6 weeks later, they will follow up if they haven't heard anything yet. And maybe 8 weeks later, they will follow on. If they continue to hear from the examiner, then that examiner will continue with the process. Of course, they can't take a year to examine now. So there are some definite parameters there. But we try our very best to get examination results as fast as possible. But it's not always within our control. So I hope, Olowefela, that helps to that helps you with your question. I see that Tumelo is unable to mute, Chair. I think that's what the problem is.
Dumalo, I have enabled your mic, but I see Prof. She also type under the chat. So let's just take these two questions and then we'll go back to the hands. So there is one from Matiza. Thank you, Prof, for highlighting the issue of connectivity. Wanted to ask about that, but now I'm answered. Okay, let's go straight to Dumelo. Good morning, Prof and colleagues. I have recently attended 2 VIVA VOS, and on both occasions, the examiners asked questions that were highlighted or rather outlined in the thesis exam. So, Prof, my question is, that should the PowerPoint be based or rather answer critical questions or comments that were made on the thesis?
Yeah, Tumelo, I think we have also answered this question where you will have access to those examiner reports, and definitely your experience is true. Those examiners know the reports that they've written, they know your thesis very well, they've read it, they've looked at it in depth, and they've examined it. So definitely they'd want to know from you, okay, so I have found a problem here, or I didn't think you explained that well, or there's another theory that you could have used, or did you not see the connection between the findings here and there, or the statistics that you've used? There are some problems here. So there's something in those examination reports that they've highlighted. And definitely a lot of them will ask the questions linked to that. But I often advise my own students also, think about what you are most proud of in your thesis. So don't only focus only on what they give in you focus on that. I mean, try and respond to the questions that they've asked, but also try to explain the things that moved you, that made the most impact on your thinking. What were those elements that your learning, was taken from good to great? And highlight some of those findings, and not only just highlight them, but in a practical level, what does that actually mean for the knowledge out there? So those are the things that I think makes a difference. And like I said before, in most cases, I think they are wanting to get your response on some of the critique in relation to you. So whatever it is that you're presenting, to them on your PowerPoint should address that. But not only that, you should also highlight the things that you felt makes a difference to the world, and the things that actually moved you in terms of your research, and what were the things that made a difference to your thinking. They want to sort of see your ability to communicate your PhD thesis as an intellectual. So they're looking for the kind of intellectual capacity that you are bringing, into the world of academia as a researcher. They're also looking for what were the things that you found, and what is the new knowledge that you're also contributing then to the world. But not only what is it, but also what difference does it make? And I think that when you are able to give a rounded conversation around addressing some of the things that they have concerns about, but also displaying some of the things that you felt really, really was the thing that you are really contributing to, in your opinion. I think that also makes a difference to them, because they then see you as an equal. They see you as an equal. They see you as an expert. So how you communicate that. My advice to my own students, and you can use this advice if you like, is don't go there to wing a PowerPoint. You can present a beautiful PowerPoint, but don't go there to just simply talk to the PowerPoint. I get my students to actually write out what is it that they want to say. I get them to practice it. I get them to listen to themselves through a voice note or through a recording, so that they can see what they sound like when they're actually entering into the room. We want to see doctorateness, and I'm sure you've heard this over and over again. And the way in which you show your doctorateness, some people pick it up from your writing, definitely, but in other ways, it shows your handle in communicating this information verbally, because you're presenting at conferences and in other kinds of ways. So I get them to really do a very thorough job in preparing that presentation, not to go over time, not to waffle, not to wing it, but to actually prepare an intellectual conversation that they want to have. And I practice this with them a few times before the VIVA VOSI comes in, as if I'm the examiner as well. I also practice questions with them, that I will ask to see how they handle questions, and then to dissect with them. When you ask this question, okay, you're answering in this kind of way, but have you thought of this? Or we play the recording back and say, listen to how you've answered this question. Do you think this was the best way to answer it? What else could you have done? So we try and make that preparation something as if you're preparing for an exam, not to scare my students, but to certainly support them, but also to have them be confident. And I think that that's really important, to be confident in the things that you want to say. Remember, you are writing this dissertation over a long period of time. You are like sort of in bed with it, so they say, for a very long period of time. But you can't often remember every aspect of it back to front in exactly the way you wrote it. So that's why when you are presenting it, you do need to make choices about what you're going to present, but you also need to have that confidence in what you are saying. And so my advice is don't go in there and just say, I'll just put the PowerPoint on and I'll just wing it. Prepare for this and have your supervisor also help you with the questions and so forth. I really hope that helps. I don't know, Chair, should we go for more questions online? But I see Satoli has got a hand up. Mashango?
Yes, Mashango, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Prof, for your very insightful, information. My question really is about, so what happens, Prof, in that rare moment where the panel can pick up that this one doesn't sound like the person has written this work, the person doesn't own this work. How do they go about that?
Oh, hey, that's a big question, Mashango. And I feel very sorry for the supervisor because I think, you have different sort of tailgates. You have different sort of defense mechanisms before you get to the VIVA. And I don't think you can supervise a student and not know whether this is their work or not. I really don't think with the amount of engagement you have during supervision. I'm not a supervisor personally who will only read a student's work. I also debate some of the things that they are reading. I also debate some of I work intensively with them when it comes to data analysis. I don't let them go off and do their own data analysis unsupervised. And so I often know the data very well as well. So I don't know how to answer that question of yours, Mashango, but I can say that it won't just be for the student that there's a big pie waiting to be dumped on their face. It's also going to mean for the supervisor a huge moment of pause. And that could be quite stressful because then disciplinary and I don't know, all kinds of other things come in. But the supervisor is going to also bear the brunt together with the student on that. So I really hope that never happens to anybody. And I really hope that that is an experience that nobody gets. I can really take an experience where perhaps the supervisor is novice. It's a new supervisor. They're still trying the shoes of supervision. They've never really supervised a PhD before. And they could be, even if I think of my own initial supervision of students in the early years, I can't say I was the perfect supervisor. They say that you supervise the way you were supervised, however, whatever experience your own supervisor gave you as a student could be one of two things. You could say, hey, I actually love the way I was supervised, or that's never going to be the way I supervise. I mean, I just sort of have those two contrasting worlds. But in my own case, I remember early on, there was like a kind of a floundering, am I giving the person the right advice? Am I doing, which meant that there was a bit of over preparation as a supervisor. And I also then used colleagues to say, my student has written this, I've given this feedback. Just look at my feedback and see if I've done the correct thing and whatever the case may be. So, the supervisor has to play a role in terms of ensuring that this is the student's work. And the biggest problem that I have is when you have a supervisor who's hands off, that the student goes and does everything and all they do is read the written work, then that kind of a supervisor will not really know, whether it's a student's work or not, and that can be very embarrassing. So I really hope that in your journey, going forward, when you get to supervise, that in the beginning, when you're supervising, you will know it's a journey by itself, and you will also tell your students, I'm learning with you. I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to definitely find out. Use your colleagues who are more experienced to guide you, to help you also when you supervise. But my biggest thing is that do not just simply read students' work and never have an interaction or an engagement with students. That advice I would give to anybody. Know what your student is researching. You need to be as much a part of that research as the student is, because remember that your student is also growing your own body of knowledge as well in whatever your expertise is. So definitely you have a vested interest in this. I think, Chair, we do another one in the chat because people have given this a while back. Is that okay?
Yes, Prof. Let's just quickly go to the chat. Colleagues, remember, if your mic has been unmuted, Please do make sure that there is no background noise from your side. You can just unmute your mic when you have been selected to do so and ask your question. Please do make sure that there is no background noise from your side. Thank you. So there is a question, Prof, from ZQ. Can you submit at any time of the year?
It's possible to submit at any time of the year, but the administrative deadlines are at UJ. There is a deadline at the end of January. There's another deadline in May, 31st of May, and there's the last deadline in October, 31st of October. If your student is able to make those deadlines, 31st of May and 31st of October, then the examination process is normally underway in the given year. The problem with the January one is that the student will have to pay registration fees and register for a new year. And I try very hard, if a student is ready to submit, to try and get them in within the 31st of May or 31st of October so that they don't have to pay a fee. Now, the problem that you're going to have is if you submit outside of the deadline times or it then depends on the administrator when they have the time to then fit your dissertation into then distributing it. Has your examiners been chosen and all of the rest of it? But technically, ZQ, you can submit at any point. That won't be disadvantaging you. The only thing is that if you submit on the 31st of January, 31st of May, or the 31st of October, the administrator involved in sharing that with your examiners and putting the whole examination process, they are only working on that because that is their deadline. If you submit at any other point in the year, then they'll have to fit you in. And we're never ever sure if that happens quickly. Does it happen the same day or the next day? Normally, if you submit on the 31st of May, for example, within 2 weeks, things are gone out for exams. But if you submit at any other point, then it depends on when the person has the time to fit you in and all the rest of it. But technically, you can submit at any time of year. But my suggestion is that if you're submitting, rather target those dates. The reason being is because somebody in the administrative space has got that as a target. So they're going to have to then use the next 2 weeks or the next 3 weeks to get it out into the world. So that's my suggestion for you. Chair, what do you want to do? Take the hand or go with the question?
Let me take Patience from the chat and then we'll go for the hand from Marum. Patience says, I have been given an extension up to May 2026. When am I expected to submit the final report?
So if you've been given an extension, it means you are over time. That's what it says to me. An extension is only given when your years of study has expired. So if you're a full-time student, you have 3 years. If you're a part-time student, you have a little bit longer than that. So it depends on when you chose, what frame of time you chose for your study. If you've been given extension to May, then you have to submit on or before May. So my take on this is that you need to make sure that you get everything ready. If you have until May 2026, and that's the 31st of May, but I don't know how far you are in the process and whether that target is going to be okay for you because I don't know your progress. So between you and your supervisor, you will have to work out a work plan that gets you to submit at that point. Usually when they give you a slight amount of time extra, it means you are over time, and I would suggest you try and make that deadline the best that you can. Chair?
Prof, now we're going for a hand. Marumo, you can unmute your mic.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Prof, for this session. I just want to ask something very quick. In the event that you've submitted and then the board or the panel sits and gave you some comments to go and work on. When you resubmit, what are the chances that it is the same panel that is going to receive that? Yeah, thank you.
So when your examiners actually give you a report, there are different passing mechanisms there. So the one is except with no revision. Another one is except with minor revisions. Another is except with major revisions under the discretion of the supervisor. And then there's one where re-examine. So I'm assuming, Marumo, you're talking about the re-examine process. Am I correct in saying that or no?
No, not the re-examining.
So come again with your question. Maybe I didn't hear you correctly.
Yeah, the question was if I submit and the assessor, so the examiner sits and they bring some comments back to me and they ask me to go and work on those comments.
Yes.
When I send that back,
Yeah.
what are the chances that the same panel that asked for work on the comments is going to be the same panel? The reason I'm raising this is that what if I go and work on the comments and then when I submit, it lands on a different panel?
No,
okay.
that won't happen.
Okay,
That won't happen. It will be the same examiners that looked at your thesis. It will be the same examiners that will be part of the VIVA VOSI. However, if somebody is not available for some reason, then 2 out of the 3 may be in the room, for example. But when you are saying that you're going to make the changes, then your supervisor, of course, is one of the people that ensures that all of the changes are made. And then together with your table of changes and the changes you made with, track changes and highlighted, that also goes to faculty higher degrees before they ratify your PhD. And at faculty higher degrees, some independent person would also check that you have done everything. So your supervisor checks it. At faculty higher degrees before ratification, somebody else checks it. But in the case of re-examination, then your examiner, whoever the examiner is that asks for re-examination, wants to see that you've effected those changes and they want to re-examine your thesis. So those are the sort of nuances of difference there, but it will never be a different sort of person or different set of panel or different set of people there, Marumo. So hopefully that will be okay, because I think it has to be kept in that kind of way, for it to be fair.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I don't see any new ones, Prof. Let's quickly go back to the chat. There is a question from Maseko. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for this presentation. My question is in regards to proposal defect. Will the student be supposed to be physically present at a certain setting or venue provided by school? For example, at school campus with the VIVAs, or it can also be an online defense session?
So I think that it's mostly online. I think that that's kind of become the norm. Part of it is because of convenience and not having the expenses of flying people in and so forth. In some instances, if everybody is available in the same country, and if they do, the option of having a physical where you all meet in the same room is there. There is that option. But I think by and large, it has become online. So, Maseko, I think you'd have to prepare for an online conversation to happen. That's been my experience so far.
Thank you. And there's okay, this is not a question, it's just a comment from Agasa. Good morning, Prof. It seems like you are hands-on with your students. Of course. That was just a comment on addition from Agasa.
Let me just sort of comment on the comment just for everybody, because I know there are people here who are going to supervise going forward. So there are 2 approaches to supervision. One is where your student has a choice in terms of the kind of topic or the kind of area that they want to research in. Now, in the beginning of my own career, because I was also very new to supervision and so forth, I went with the idea that my student would come up with some kind of topic, and that because I know a little bit about research, we'd be able to, work together and so forth. So if you look at my career, initially I had students who had their own topics. They were in education, leadership, and management, but not necessarily in the space that I was researching. And so even though it is very beneficial to have students who have their own topics and who are passionate about what they're wanting to study, the problem that you have is that you're kind of in a way less prepared for those kinds of topics as compared to when they are researching in your particular niche. So, for example, my niche is leading education for sustainable futures. But say, for example, my student wants to research something that is a leadership topic, but it's about, let's say, policy and law, which I'm not saying is not in my niche, but it's not directly the thing, the heart of what I talk about or what I research or what I write about. Then in order to support my students, I'm also going to have to, alongside the student, also do like a second PhD, because I'm going to have to then go and read what they're reading to help them and all of the rest of it. And when you're a new supervisor, you kind of go down that road. It is kind of how it happens. But then over the years, I started to get a little bit more, maybe a little bit more wiser. And the one thing which I do is whatever I research, whatever I do by way of, engaging with the data collection and with research itself, I bring it into my classes. So all of the modules that I teach, if you've ever been taught by me, you will find that I will bring all of my research into my classes. And I try to then see who has got an affinity for the kind of research that I'm doing. And that person would obviously have a lot of questions. That person would take on the assessment tasks and everything that I put into my modules with a lot more vigor and zest. And they have a lot more interest in what I'm doing, and we have that relationship that are built up in honors and masters and even in the ADE module that I teach. And then when it comes to masters and PhD full-time, when I see their names on the list of people who have applied, then I know that they are aligned with the kind of research that I'm doing. So it's likely that I'm going to be choosing those people to supervise, not because I don't like the other people or the other topics. It's just that because our work aligns with one another and we have had built a relationship, previously. And normally, if I will work with a student at master's level, I normally also work with them at PhD level. In a very rare instance, the student chooses to be somewhere else at PhD, but that's also often something that happens. So my advice to people in the room is that when you are choosing your students, you'd want to choose people that are aligned with your research interests. You don't force them to be aligned with your research interests. And I don't even look at the marks. I don't look and say, I want all the students who are the top performers to be part of my PhD team. I look for student interest. I look for their passion first. And I begin that stage of identifying who these people are with that kind of passion through the work that I do in the modules, particularly the postgraduate modules. And then the other thing which I do is that most of my students work on my projects. So I get funding for projects. And when I invite students in, I say to them, look, I have X, Y, and Z project that's happening. If you can find your place in this project, then it is funded, so the field work and everything will be taken care of. And this is really a lot of the reason why I'm very aware of my students' data, and I'm aware of, because they work in projects also. So when there's two PhDs or two master's students working on a project, then they also get to connect with one another because they are reading similar materials. They are journeying through a research process with the community, together. And that's how I build my research projects as well. So for those of you in the room who are thinking that you are going to supervise down the line, the first thing which I will advise you is, instead of having your student choose their own topic that might not necessarily align with your research interest, then the first thing that you should do, whoever you're assigned, is talk to them about the things that you're passionate about and try and have them see what is their place in that passion. If they can find some angle or some area of research that hasn't been done before, which links to where you are working, and you may be well aware of some of the things that you think will be needed, so you can outline that for them. And then if you work with students like that, then you build your own body of knowledge with your students, but then you're also working in a bit more hands-on because you are interested in what your student is doing. And then, of course, there's a lot of pressure for academics to also get projects and funded projects and so forth. And you can't do all of that, projects by yourself. You need a capacity of people who will also help you with that research. And then you can killing two birds with one stone. One is that the student is supported with the research and data gathering. They're contributing to a new knowledge, and they're also contributing to a community. But at the same time, they are getting a PhD, in the process out of it. And usually those students become colleagues for life because they then continue the work, kind of going forward. So I hope that helps, people in the room as they go forward into their supervision journey. So thanks for that comment. I appreciate it. Then I think we have Johannes Chair, who also made a comment. Johannes, I think you might be wanting to start your journey. So you're saying it will come in useful in the year 2026. Please, Johannes, take my details down. If you need any support or help as you approach 2026 with your supervision, or if you being asked to chair, a session or whatever it is, please shout. I'm happy to help in any way. And then I don't know if we want to take a hand or we want to go ahead with the chat chair.
Let's just take this one from VIVA. VIVA says, can they register for only half of the year for 6 months instead of 12? With zoology department, with zoology, the PhD modules are divided into two, assuming it's for 2 halves of the year. Please clarify if this is possible.
I am not the best person to speak to about the rules related to the zoology program. So I'm really sorry, Rikhlube, I may not be able to give you the correct answer to this one. The problem is that, like I can talk from the point of view of our master's online program where we have modules. So we have 11 modules and we've got 4 dissertation modules in our program. And that happens over 2 years. It's only a part-time option. It's not a full-time option in our case. So in our case, our students have to do all of the modules before they can go into doing minor dissertation. They can't have 3 modules and then go and do research and come back and do another 3 modules. But if they have failed a module, then they can catch up that module when it's next offered. So then you can pause your research to catch up on a module that you might have failed or whatever the case may be. So I'm so sorry, Rafil, I don't have an answer to that particular question of yours. I apologize for that. But Chair, if Rafil, we can point out maybe to the right people in zoology, that might help.
Thank you, Prof. Mila, I think you can just contact your department or your faculty. And yeah, I think they are the right people that can assist with that. So I see there's a hand from Imtasia. You can just unmute your mic.
Good morning, Prof. Good morning, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I'm sorry, Chair. I've edited my comment in the chats somehow and maybe did not show. I wanted to ask or request advice from Prof on what to do if, as a student, I'm not getting support from the supervisor.
Oh, gosh. That's a hard one. That's a hard one, Imtasia, and I really feel for you in that particular situation. The only advice that I can actually give is if your constant conversation and communication, whether by email or physically with the supervisor, is not resulting in an open flow of communication, then the only other option that you have is to get somebody to mediate a conversation. Now, that mediator could be the head of department. It could be, somebody to mediate between the two of you so that you can either come to some kind of agreement and your voice can be heard about where you're not feeling supported. But that's a tough one because, you know, the supervisor-student relationship is such a delicate relationship that the moment you do something to harm that relationship, even though there is an injustice, you know, so I'm not for once, downplaying your problem, but certainly that's the one space I think mediation could be a way to assist, or you could actually request for a change in supervisor, but both cases are uncomfortable. So I'm really sorry that you're going through that, Intasia, and I really hope that maybe there's a way to have a conversation with your supervisor that can get you both on the same page. I'm so sorry to hear about that, because it is difficult. But at the worst case scenario, maybe try and ask for maybe a mediator to help you with communication so that you can find some way to reach each other. And if that doesn't work, then maybe a change in supervisor. But I feel sad when I hear this. Sorry to hear about this.
Thank you, Prof, for that. We don't have any new hands at the moment. Let me just quickly go to the chat. There's a question from Millicent. With regards to preferable submission date, is it the same with submission of a master's thesis?
It's exactly the same, yeah. Those are the same dates. The only thing that January date is a bit complicated because you have to pay registration fees, and that's sometimes unfair for the student because you're paying for a whole year just for submitting in January. So my suggestion is try and make the May or the October submission. Then that way, at least you get the benefit of a full year. So yeah, for the masters, it's exactly the same. I think that does it with the questions in the chat. Anything else that anybody has a burning question? And Chair, I'm very happy for people to actually email me or call me on Teams or whatever, should they have any questions beyond the session that might be useful to them. Even if they just want to, I mean, if you are at the moment of defense and you're saying, I just want somebody else to just listen to me, I'm quite happy to also help in that way as well, because I think we have to be a community with each other. And we have to try and support each other through these difficult times when actually, it's a celebration of your work. If you think of the VIVA as a celebration of your work, rather than it being an exam process, then I think you will bring out of your VIVA the best that it can offer you. On another note, I do want to share this with you. The last student that went through a VIVA had in the, as part of his examination panel, an individual there who was in the process of editing a book with one of the education leadership gurus of the world. And this person that she's editing the book, so she's a co-editor with a group of people, but the person leading this book project is somebody very, very respected in the education leadership community. And when the student's VIVA was done and we had congratulated him and he said, you have passed and everything has gone well. So what happens is that the student gives a presentation, there's a Q&A from the panel, the student is asked to leave the room for a few minutes while there's the deliberation. People then say whether they passed or failed, the student is invited back into the room, and then the student is given the good news. We hope in all cases the student is given the good news. And in this particular case, the one external examiner invited the student to write a chapter for this book. And that made us really feel the value of his work. And really, colleagues, if you give a really great VIVA, you don't know what networking opportunity is already in that room. Remember, it's your time to impress a group of people that you've probably never met before. And you stand there in a space of expertise. You stand there as in a space of doctrineness, in an intellectual capacity. And that's, I mean, what better place to brand yourself and your work. And remember, after all the hard work that you did over the years, this is a celebration. The VIVA, in my opinion, I always tell my students, see the VIVA as a celebration of your work. and try and what would you say if you were having a party, presenting your work to people in a party setup? What would be the things that you'd want to share with people? And those are the things that you should possibly share in your defense. So colleagues, for all of you who are going through the process of submission, I really wish you the very, very best, for everything that's coming. 31st of October is a few weeks down the line. And certainly I have 4 students who are submitting on the 31st of October. So I know the stresses that all of you are going through. And then, of course, when you are ready for your VIVA also, just remember that it's a celebration of your work. And if you look at it from that lens, then I think you will do a really good job with the presentation that you will make. Chair, I think there's 1 or 2 questions in the chat that we can maybe go through. And I think Yolanda has also got a hand. Yolanda, maybe if you want to just go ahead and then I can take the 2 or 3 questions in the chat.
Yolanda, you can just unmute your mic. Okay, I think we lost her.
Okay.
Let's just
Let
go
me
through
so
the
long go to
chat.
the chat while you try and figure out what happened with Yolanda. I think that her mic might be giving a problem, Chair. Just have a look, perhaps. Okay,
Yeah.
if you submit in October and the examination and VIVA is delayed until the following year, will students have to pay? No, if it's a delay from the examiner side, you don't have to pay a registration and all of that. The problem is the January. If you get into January, then you pay registration. Johannes, for your final write-up, find as many friends as you possibly can, because the more people who read and give you commentary on your work, the better. That is my advice to you. Get as many people to read your work, talk about your work in as many circles as you possibly can. Don't just sit there and just do your own writing and use your own, spell check tools and whatever it is. Find a community of people, also people. So you read their work, they read your work, because one of the problems that I have with a lot of students is that you are writing and it's a lone journey. Even your own friends don't even know what you are researching. You haven't discussed it with them. They're completely in the dark. So I always say to my students, find a community of people who are also doing their PhD, also doing their masters. Have these conversations with them. Let them read your work. You read their work. And the more eyes that you have on your work, the better the chapters become, because you have many, many people then who are giving you advice and who are critiquing you, in the work that you're doing. So that is the one advice that I would get: as many critical readers as you can.
Prof, my mic has been
Great,
enabled now.
Yolanda.
All right.
Please go
I don't
ahead.
know if I missed this, but I wanted to find out that after submission, well, I'm submitting on the 31st of October. After submission,
Best of luck.
Thank you. What timelines are we looking at? Like, normally, when is VIVA from submission?
The only thing is that normally when they submit in October, by December, there should be a response from the examiners. That's a time frame that they give them, Yolanda. But like I said, sometimes examiners can, delay, and you can only put a VIVA together once all of the examination reports have come in. You and your supervisor have had time to look at it and so forth. So in most cases, an April graduation would be your best bet the following year, Yolanda, if all things go well. The problem is sometimes there is hold up with examiners and follow-ups have to take place and all of the rest of it. So, there isn't a crystal ball. At this point, I would say your best bet is to think, if I submit on the 31st of October, I'll graduate in April. That's your best bet.
Thank you so much, Prof.
No problem at all. And I'll be thinking about you and everybody else submitting on the 31st, while my 4 students are also stressed out trying to submit as well. I'll be thinking of all of you and praying for a very good and easy submission, but also a very good examination process for all of you. Somebody asked about PhD research proposal. The PhD research proposal is normally within the year. So you have 2 types of registrations. You have one which is a formal registration. In other words, you are in year 1 of your PhD. And in that case, within that first year, you have to have submitted a PhD proposal. And that would have to have had the proposal itself, the first doctoral committee, and the faculty higher degrees that that ratifies it. So it has to have gone through that full process, and your title in faculty higher degrees, when they ratify your proposal, they accept your title, and that then becomes the title under which your dissertation will go. So that's the one kind of deadline. In other cases, when we are already full with PhD applications, then sometimes you have 1 or 2 students who are in a pre-registration. In our faculty, they get 6 months in which to come up with a proposal. The pre-registration is when there isn't space, formal space for you. So your fee that you pay for pre-registration is less than what you pay for the full year. And in pre-registration, you're expected within 6 months to come up with the proposal. But Mirjam, Yolanda, Don, whoever else is submitting on the 31st of October, you have my highest regard and blessings, as well as prayers for this journey ahead. I'll be thinking of all of you, and also hoping that everything with your submission goes well. Colleagues, also remember that when you are submitting, there are certain technical things that you need, like an affidavit. Don't leave the Turnitin and these days the AI stories. Don't leave all of that until the last minute. The language editor, don't expect that you send to a language editor, it has been done perfectly. You have to check on the language editor as well. And most important, guys, remember that the very first few paragraphs that your examiner reads makes the person want to read your dissertation or not. My advice to you is, when you write those introductory paragraphs, make it powerful. So if you still have a bit of time leading towards submission, go back to the first few paragraphs that you are writing and say, if I were to be examining this thesis, what do I put in here that really makes the person want to read? So, that's the advice that I can give you by way of how do you sort of put somebody in a very good mood when they pick up your dissertation to read. The first few paragraphs make it a pleasant experience. And so take care when you are writing those first few paragraphs, because that's the first interaction that those people have with your work. Simon, please go ahead.
Hi, Prof. Thank you so much
Hi.
for the presentation. Just a question. So if I am doing my PhD by publication, and I have submitted my articles for publication, then when I submit my final thesis, won't I struggle on the plagiarism level because it has been published elsewhere?
Oops, that's a big question. Yeah, I didn't think about that, because, normally what happens is that when our students submit their thesis, when they're doing the journal articles, we have exactly the same problem. If the library publishes it and the student writes the articles, the amount of overhaul that you have to do. But then remember, when you're submitting by article, you are not submitting just the articles and then some examiner is going to have to make sense of it. You're also having a written process through which you are trying to tie the different threads that bring that body of work together. So it's not only about the articles, it's also about how you pull together the body of work and explain to the, to the examiners about what this body of work represents and what are the threads that you have created within it. Simon, I would be lying to you if I told you that I knew about the Turnitin story on writing through articles, but let me promise to get back to you on that particular one. We very rarely have students who write by articles, so I don't have an immediate answer for you, but let me note it down and I will get back to you personally on that matter, if that's okay with you.
Thanks, much appreciated.
Brilliant. Let's go for Hilma. Hilma, please go ahead.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for the insightful session. I picked up quite a lot. I wanted to find out, I'm at the same page in terms of article thesis, article based. Number one, because the thing is, with the article, they are limited in terms of the length, and you would have reviewers advising you to remove certain things, and they would be missing in the article. Now, since these articles are published already, will still the examiners have a say in terms of what you need to add, what you need to take out, because they are sort of like a replica of what is already reviewed and published? That's the first question. My last question is there still a possibilities of someone to graduate in October, let's say when they are submitting this week or next week, because I'm looking forward to my submission.
Ooh, your second
Thank you, Prof.
question, I don't know if that's at all possible, like for an exam process to be completed in a week, for it to go through all the committees and all of that, because graduation is not simply one process. The reports come in, you fix it, it goes in. No, it's not like that. There's still committees, it has to still go to Senate, there's the whole process, and they all have dates, Hilma. So I wager to say that you submit in October, prepare for an April graduation. I don't think a graduation, is going to be possible that early. So sorry about that. With your articles, your examiners are going to actually look at your articles individually and as a collective. It's like giving an opinion on a collective piece of work. So the opinions that they might give you and the reflections that they might give you, as well as some of the critique that they might give you, might help you prepare for future articles that you're putting down the line. But it could also be in your thesis itself. There is a limitation section where you can actually say that, these are the aspects that I need to look at going forward because they are missing in something. So we're not expecting that in your thesis, you are going to say, okay, my thesis is absolutely perfect. There are limitations. There are things part of this article, even though it's public. But that means that going forward, it gives you opportunity to widen the kind of work that you will do in terms of further publications from here. I really hope that helps, Hilma, with that request.
Thank you, Prof. It does, because then it helps me to frame my answers around what has not been done in the thesis. And then since they're already published, at least I can think of the way forward and not necessarily to make changes to the existing articles.
I'm so sorry, Hilma. I think I got logged out for some reason or the other, so I missed the last part of your comment. But I hope that it really helped, at least with you going forward. Let's maybe move over to Ellison. Ellison, go ahead.
Thanks, Prof. Mine is a question about, well, my supervisor actually left UJ and is now at a university overseas. So the communication has been not so perfect lately, but she did tell me that the examiners, I think there had to be a change in examiners, and so I just don't know whether I should ask. So where exactly does my thesis stand in terms of, is it being examined now that there's been a change in the examiners? How does it work? And, does it mean that
Okay,
it's being
so
examined or not?
I'm assuming Ellison.
We're gonna lose.
I'm sorry, Edison. It looks like I'm hopping in and out. Maybe connectivity on my side is giving a problem. Edison, is your thesis submitted already?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then what has happened is that it's like I was explaining, sometimes the original examination examiner that was chosen had some problem, maybe illness or something happened, and they can't examine anymore. Now there had to be a change in examiner. The problem is going to be a delay because that new examiner is going to need time to examine. They could actually request, try and do this within the next month or the next 3 weeks, but it won't be the same as when you originally chose the examiner. So the only problem that you're going to have is a delay now. I don't think that your supervisor would have chosen a replacement examiner that would not fit. So the examiner would definitely fit and they would be able to examine your thesis. The only problem now is that you're going to have a delay. So I'm sorry about that, Innocent, and I really hope that for your sake, the person does it quickly, because I know these delays can be quite frustrating. Chair, there's a 1 or 2 questions in the chat again. So let's maybe go through it.
Yes, Prof. We can quickly go through some few questions. Let me just.
Oh, so Palesa's asking for a list of what would be the documents required in preparation for the PhD submission. So Palesa, your faculty admin person would have that list and they'd be able to give you everything that you need. Because I have the list, I normally just give it to my students so that as they're preparing for that final run, they get the affidavits and all the other things sorted. But maybe just check with your admin person or at the first point of call, just check maybe with your supervisor if they can just give you that information. I'm not sure if it's the same in all faculties. Otherwise, I would share it with you directly. But perhaps maybe just check with your supervisor first if they can give it to you. If they can't, then just contact me and I'll try and see if I can help. And then thanks, Oswald, for that lovely comment. And then Sheikh Fatso says, my supervisor had to write a memo explaining why the plagiarism count was over 25% due to the 2 publications already published. Oh, you have answered the question of who was it that asked that question? Was it Simon? Somebody asked that question. So thanks, Sheikh Fatso. This is exactly what I wanted, people to also share the things that they know. So thanks for that. I will remember that also if I'm ever asked that question again. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for that. Okay, those were comments from Fatima and somebody with awards that's also on here. So they want a PowerPoint. I can give you a PowerPoint. That's not a problem at all. I don't really think it will just be 1 or 2 slides, maybe summarizing. So, Chair, I will maybe send you a PowerPoint with 1 or 2 slides just summarizing some of the things that we captured today. And then perhaps that could be useful for people. And then in terms of word count, honestly, Daniel, I've actually had theses that have been very long, over 300-400 pages. And then I've had a 150-page thesis, which has been a brilliant thesis. So I actually think it's the quality of the work more than the page count, to be quite honest. And of course, if your contribution is huge because there's not much literature on the topic and so forth, then definitely I know your examiners will also know that. Please check with your supervisor, but my take on it is the quality rather than the how many pages, that counts here. But check with your supervisor because they will know in that particular field, what works. And so, yes, Michael, I can definitely share my email address. Che, do you mind if I put my email address in the chat? Or shall I share it in some other way?
Yes, Prof. You can just type it under the chat so that everyone can have an access to it.
And then I'm
Thank
also
you.
going to put my room number on APK. Just because sometimes I'm often in the office. So sometimes people want a much more personalized conversation with someone. And so I'm just going to put my office details there as well. And you're very welcome to pop in for a cup of tea and a conversation, unless I'm in a meeting or something. But certainly you can use my email, and I'm very open to supporting and helping in whatever way that you need. Colleagues and Chair, I must say that this session has not only been rewarding for you, but it's also been very rewarding for me. Chair, thank you so much for inviting me into the space with amazing students in the room, future supervisors, people who are in that last stretch of submitting, and people who are really developing expertise and knowledge that is badly needed for our country. Colleagues, I really appreciate each one of you. I wish you well with your submissions, and I'm open to at any point, at any time, if you need anything, just reach out and I'll try to help the best that I can. Takwa, I'm sure the RCD will provide with recordings after the session. Let's take Manla's hand as Manla Sibanda's hand as the last hand. Chair, is that okay? I think we have 5 more minutes before the session ends. Yeah. Mandla, go ahead.
Yes. Mandla, you can unmute your mic. You can just unmute your mic. It seems like
maybe there's a problem there, but Manda, please email me if we leave the session and we haven't communicated. Chair, thank you again very much for inviting me and for this amazing session. And when I look at the room and I look at so many names here, I really feel very blessed to be in all of your company. Take care, everybody. It's recess. Enjoy the week also. And remember, all work and no play also is not a good idea. So find some time to celebrate yourself and find some conversation space where you can talk about your research, but also enjoy yourselves as well. Take care, everybody. Have a beautiful day. And don't forget to put the, I think the chair is asking for a evaluation. If, then it helps RCD to also know what kind of sessions are helpful for you. Take care, everybody. Goodbye. God bless.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much, Prof.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you, Prof.
you.
Thank you to the audience
Bye.
as well.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.